In this video, we're going to be discussing adding and subtracting complex numbers, okay? Now, in the previous videos, and try to zoom in here a little bit when I edit this, but in previous videos, we had defined complex numbers as being a combination of a real number and some imaginary unit put together to form a complex number, okay? So we have the definitions for adding and subtracting complex numbers up here. And so before we even start by looking at these definitions, what I'm going to tell you is this. Although I is not, say, a variable, that doesn't matter. When we add or subtract complex numbers, it's basically going to be combining like terms, okay? So we're going to make sure we do this appropriately. But let's look at the definitions, okay? And we have two of them. This first definition is going to confront the operation of addition. And so we say if we had two numbers, a plus bi, and we were adding that to a complex number, c plus di, what you would notice is this. We'll take the real parts, a plus c, and we'll combine those to form some new real part. We can give it another letter, but we say it's a plus c. Plus, and you'll notice we have b plus di, okay? So we'll combine the coefficients of bi and di to give you plus di. So like if you had like 3x plus 4x, you get 3 plus 4, which is 7x, okay? In this case, we have like maybe 3i plus 4i, we get 3 plus 4, which is 7i, okay? And likewise, this is also true for subtraction. If we were to take some number a plus bi minus c plus di, what I want you to notice is this. First of all, that we have a minus in front of some parenthetical quantity. So it would be possible to take subtraction and rewrite it as a plus bi. We could say, and if we distributed the negative, it'd be the same thing as plus negative c minus di, if we distributed the negative through this set of parentheses up here, okay? And then you could just add it from there and change it to addition. You would still end up with a positive a and a negative c for your a minus c here, and a positive b and a negative d for your b minus di, okay? So just to kind of illustrate this, we're going to use a plethora of examples here in which we add and or subtract several complex numbers, starting with example A. Sorry, I'm going to fix this real quick. So example A, you're going to notice we have this number 4 plus 7i. This is our first complex number. We'd like to add it to the second complex number. Since this is addition, we can go ahead and neglect the parentheses, and this would be like the same thing as 4 plus 7i plus 1 minus 6i. And before we had mentioned, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start by adding the real parts of these numbers. So the real parts being 4 and 1, we crank out 5 as being the real part of our sum, okay? And then we say, okay, so now we'll add the complex parts, or the imaginary parts, pardon me. So we say a positive 7i and a negative 6i turns out to be 1i, or we could just write I. But what you'll notice is this. I added two complex numbers, and I got a new complex number, but that can be written in standard form, essentially, okay? So when you add two complex numbers, you better be getting a new complex number. That being said, why don't we go ahead and explore the concept of subtraction? Now, again with this negative out front, you could consider this to be a negative 1. The easiest way to kind of look at this is that we have a negative 1 in front, and we can distribute this. We'll just rewrite it like addition and do it just as we do addition. So, and that's just like when you add, subtract things. Subtract positives, same thing as adding negatives. So this would be the same thing as 1 plus 2i, this number here, okay? We could change this to plus, it's an I, plus negative 4 minus 2i after we distribute that negative through. And so now in this case, we can also neglect the parentheses and say, all right, so our real part plus our real part, that's 1 plus negative 4, we get negative 3 is our new real part. And then 2i plus negative 2i, we get plus 0i. Now I know what you might be thinking here. Well, we don't really have to write the 0. This is just negative 3. And you'd be correct in saying this. However, if you are being asked to write the number in standard form, okay, complex number in standard form, you do need to write the real part plus the imaginary part, or in a plus bi form. We do value the 0, believe it or not. Okay. So moving right along, why don't we go ahead and direct our attention up here to C. You're going to notice I have 3i minus the entire complex number, negative 2 plus 3i, minus the entire complex number, 2 plus 5i. So here's going to be our primary intent, is to take these negatives and distribute them through the parenthetical quantities so that we can change this and rewrite it all as addition. So instead of 3i minus, we'll now have 3i plus, and this negative 2 would become positive 2. Our our positive 3i would become negative 3i, okay? Plus, now inside here we'd have negative 2 minus 5i. So now that this is done, we'll go ahead and identify the parts we want to sum together first, starting with the real parts. So a positive 2 and a negative 2 are our real parts. We could say is just 0. And I do want to write the 0. Okay, so now that those have been summed, we'll go ahead and combine like terms with our i's here. So we got a positive 3i, a negative 3i, so those cancel, and a negative 5i. So we just end up with this purely imaginary number. So again, you might be saying to yourself, can't I just express this as negative 5i? And you can. But again, it is very valuable to know how to write all of our complex solutions in standard form, a plus bi form. So we're looking for this, and quite technically, we should be listing this as 0 plus negative 5i. Okay? We don't have to write it like that, but it's appropriate. Okay? And then finally, this last one here, and it seems that I've written a wrong parenthesis again. Let's remedy that. Okay. Excuse me. So now we've got 3 plus 2i, this complex number here, plus the complex number 4 minus I, minus the complex number 7 plus I. And again, we'll just go ahead, since we have a difference over here, and distribute this negative. And we can rewrite this as now 3 plus 2i plus 4 minus I. And then we have plus, now negative 7 minus an individual I. And now that this is entirely a sum, let's just go ahead and combine like terms. We got for real parts, we have a 3, a 4, and a negative 7. So 3 and 4 sum to 7, and our negative 7, those cancel. And we get a real part that is 0. Again, we do want to list the 0. And now to proceed to the imaginary parts, we've got a positive 2i, a negative I, and a negative I. And you can see what I've kind of done here. Those actually sum to 0. So this would be the complex number 0. You believe it. Okay, because 0 is a complex number. All of our numbers are complex. It's just that we do want to list it in a plus bi form. So if somebody says, hey, write it in standard form, you actually have to write 0 plus 0i. And that's basically the gist of how you add and subtract complex numbers. It is combine like terms.